Politically Conscious returns today, Wednesday at noon, as Democratic Minority Leader Chuck Schumer caves to the Republican spending bill, and many in his party are very upset with him for not shutting down the government. Our political experts explain what does this bill actually mean for us as the American people, and President Trump threatens a federal judge. Let's discuss. If you're tired of the propaganda, listen to us. What's up, everybody? It's your boy, mental activist Montoya Smith. Welcome to Politically Conscious 19. We got all the players in the house today. My brother Emil Bryant, political consultant, and Shelly Winters of the Shelly Winters Show. Glad to have you three brothers on with me, if you will. We're going to quickly explain this for people that are just now getting in tune. We definitely getting our regular watchers, man. We're averaging 200, 300 watchers per show. So glad that we've been able to maintain that consistency, if you will. But if you are new to the show, I'm just going to give out the layout, let both of these brothers introduce themselves and get right into these cuts today. And so what we do with Politically Conscious is we try to raise the conscious level of your political knowledge by sharing political cuts from around the internet, if you will. And our experts kind of give their take. Emil kind of shoots from the left, if you will. Shelly Winters shoots from the right. I try to moderate from the middle as best I can. And so hopefully you can weed through all the propaganda of these various cuts that you see in political news. So that's our purpose with Politically Conscious. With that said, Emil, introduce yourself very briefly. Shelly, give a quick introduction, and we're going to play a cut and get started.
I am Emil Bryant. I am a political consultant, author, and speaker, as well as a business consultant. I have consulted on a congressional campaign, as well as advising candidates for Senate, local and state, House, and council positions. My job as a political consultant is to help frame the truth, not spin it. I believe people deserve to know what's really going on. Transparency in government is a huge asset to the people. So the more we tell them the truth, the better this country works. So I'm all about helping candidates tell the truth.
Shelly, glad to have you black with us, if you will. As I always say, from the Mental Dialogue Show, for those that see that in the background, we're just bringing that consciousness over to Politically Conscious. But thanks for being with us, King.
Yes, sir. Shelly Winter, host of the Shelly Winter Show, Monday through Fridays, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. on 95.5 WSB Atlantis News and Talk, or WSBradio.com.
Absolutely. Let's get into the spending bill. It's been dubbed the Republican spending bill, so-called Republican spending bill. So let's go ahead and get started with these cuts and hear what our experts have to say about them.
We don't agree with what's been sent to us, but if we withhold our votes, that is going to shut the government down. And I think that's one of our core responsibilities in the Senate or in the government here, to not ever allow the government to shut down. And I would see that it become, for Democrats, we're going to burn the village down just to save it. And now, if we are concerned the way our economy could be teetering into a recession, and if the government shutdown nudges that towards that, I think that's something that the government, then the Republicans, that the Democrats will own shutting the government down. And I think that would be the wrong kind of message, because that would have a substantial impact on millions and millions of innocent Americans by stuck in the middle of this battle.
Emil, I'll start with you as you hear Senator Fetterman explain why he was deciding to vote for the spending bill, whereas Democratic Minority Leader Chuck Schumer put in a kind of a hard space, if you will, and he basically makes the concession to the, I would say a lot of his Democratic peers were very upset about him making that decision, and some were, I guess, willing to shut the government down, but you hear Senator Fetterman say that doesn't make sense to him, and they would have to own that had the Democrats done that. Your thoughts on that cut?
You're probably going to hear Shelly talk about this in detail, but the Democrats were checkmated, and it's a pretty easy checkmate to see. The point here is that they were stuck with two bad options: shut the government down, which allows the Republicans to message that they were going to, the Republicans' message, the Democrats did this to you. We had a bill. We passed it through the House. The Senate could have passed it, and they didn't. And now you're suffering, America, because the Democrats hate you. If they do sign it, which they did, they passed it so the president could sign it. Then the other messaging was, you guys are in disarray. You guys don't know how to resist the onslaught from the Republican side. It was two bad choices. And this is one of the challenges of being a politician in America. Any politician in any government anywhere is going to have to make some hard choices. Choice A shuts down the government. Choice B, you align with the president's priorities or Republican priorities. Which do you pick? The problem is that before we got here, the spending bill, if you look at it, didn't have a whole lot of amendments from the Democrats that got voted on or voted up. It was a rush job, as they always are with continuing resolutions. Remember, this continuing resolution is not the normal order of Congress. The normal order of Congress is to spend money on a spending bill that's passed before the fiscal year 1 October of 2024. We're in March of 2025. So if we haven't passed the regular order spending bill, these continuing resolutions, their job is to simply keep the government open. Were there some poison pills put in there? Absolutely. Those poison pills make the Democrats vote for things they don't want. But at the end of the day, the Senator Schumer's calculus said it is better to lose this battle and try to win the war another way than to shut down the government and lose what could have been a larger battle, which may have led to losing the war overall. So I see it as a checkmate.
Let me jump in and let me get Shelley in here if you don't mind, Emil. And it's simply because you mentioned Schumer, I'm going to kind of share some words he said and then throw it over to Shelley. I saw these. I forget which article I got this from, but it just says, recognizing that the Democrats were left with only an up or down alternative, Mr. Schumer argued that a shutdown would only play into the hands of Mr. Trump and Mr. Musk, ceding more power to them to commandeer federal agencies. In a shutdown, he said, the Trump administration could decide which federal workers would be deemed non-essential and furloughed, and he warned that Republicans would have little incentive to reopen the government. As bad as the CR is, continuing resolution, Mr. Schumer said on Friday morning, using shorthand for continuing resolution, I believe that allowing President Trump to take more power is a far worse option. Shelley, your thoughts on all of this?
Like Emil said, it was a choice between the rock and the hard wall, or whatever that saying is, for the Democrats. He's right. He's absolutely right. The problem that I have is with the Republicans, and in December, I had the problem with the Democrats when they were in charge of Congress, and they passed the CR in December, which was supposed to be the spending bill that was done back in October. This kind of spending money for people that we elect is just it's criminal. It's honest to God criminal. And the only people that argue one side versus the other in this situation are real hardcore partisans who believe that their friendships are in Congress and are in government and are afraid to criticize. Because regular people like us, and I consider myself regular, I'm just on a radio. That's the only difference between me and any voter. I'm a regular person. To spend money in 6-month increments and under the point of a gun from the other side or whoever's in control at that moment is patently absurd. It really is absurd. And I think that we need to demand better from our elected officials, that they come together and make a budget. And that budget should not include any pork spending. That budget should only be spending that is totally necessary. And that's it. And you don't need these highways to nowhere. You don't need these construction boondoggles. Those are the kind of things that are easy to say no to. But we have to demand these people do it. The trick that they play on us is like in December or back in October, the the right-leaning conservative media was telling us, oh, look at all the spending, this wasteful spending the Democrats have in there. And then now, just the other day, all the left-leaning media says, oh, look at all the cuts that the Republicans have in there. And so you're forced to get mad at one and not mad at the other. And really, we should be mad at both of them because they should be able to come together to make a budget. And so it's really criminal. It's nothing less than criminal. And that's my take. I said it publicly on my show. I mean, I'm saying it publicly here as well. But I'm mad at the Republicans because you should have a full budget by now. You told me back in December, Trump won. We won the House. We won the Senate. We'll have a full budget when Trump's inaugurated. When it comes up in mid March, we'll have a full budget. And you did nothing. You got all excited. We get all excited about Doge, but Doge cuts are not in stone. When Trump is out of office in 2029, the next president can just put back everything Doge cut out. So it really is criminal what's going on in this country. These people are really playing us.
Yeah, I was going to play another cut, but I'm going to jump to because it's congruent with what you're talking about, Shelley, and I think you will appreciate it. I like politicians like what you're about to hear because, again, if you challenge your own side, I funk with you. Like, that's just how I get down. So let me play Chip Roy. Y'all may have seen this cut floating around as well.
It's embarrassing. It's shameful. Yes, I think this bill is better than it was yesterday on certain respects, but to take this bill yesterday and congratulate yourself because it's shorter in pages but increases the debt by $5 trillion is asinine. And that's precisely what Republicans are doing. I'm absolutely sickened by a party that campaigns on fiscal responsibility and has the temerity to go forward to the American people and say, you think this is fiscally responsible. It is absolutely ridiculous.
Well, that was right-wing Republican Congressman Chip Roy of Texas, a frequent critic of the leadership spending bill, bashing his Republican colleagues over its latest iteration. Ouch. Meow.
Shelley, any thoughts on that? Again, I just thought it was interesting to see that cut floating around. Well, I think he's saying a lot of what you're saying is maybe specifically to this bill, and we do need to break out what's happening in this bill for this show.
Yeah, I mean, I say it all the time. Republicans come to me and Republican voters every single day, every single election. And say, vote for me, I'm going to cut spending. In their placards, in their phone banking, cut spending is somewhere on that piece of paper. And then they get elected, and they go back to Congress, and they never cut spending. Which is why I said earlier on this show that Doge is so necessary. It's the way Elon Musk is doing it, and the way Trump is doing Doge, it's the only way it can be done. Because Congress is not going to do it on their own. And you hear Chip Roy saying the same thing. Democrats don't necessarily ever like cutting spending. You know, the Democrat mentality is kind of different. Government is supposed to be there. Republicans see a lot of wasteful spending in government only when they're running for office. So the only way you can really cut government is by having an outsider come in who has no friends with anybody and has, as I've said before, FU money. And then that's the only way to get it done, because as Chip Roy just laid out, the CR in March added $10 billion in spending, $10 billion in spending. And these are from the people who said they were cutting the spending. But it does nothing to cut spending. As a matter of fact, most line items that are compulsory spending, like Social Security, things like that, all of those things, most of them went up. Only in a couple of areas did it go down. And even though it went down in a few areas, 10 billion extra was spent than which was in the budget for full year 2024. So even with control of the House, the Senate, and the White House, you still didn't kept spending with your own CR bill.
Yeah, let me share another thought from Congressman. I'm going to read this very quickly, then we'll play another cut. Congressman Johnny Oszewski, I hope I'm saying it right. He says, tonight's vote left no doubt House Republicans side with Donald Trump and Elon Musk over the American people. The budget not only betrays the public, but does nothing to bring down the cost of gas, groceries, housing, and utilities. Instead, it aims to pay for a $4.5 trillion in tax cuts that will overwhelmingly enrich the ultra wealthy. Lowering costs for working families was the loudest mandate in November's election, and this budget does nothing to deliver for them. Instead, this budget drives up the costs for countless Americans. It directly threatens 50,000 of my constituents who rely on SNAP to put food on the table. It would increase the health care premiums. I'll skip past that. He says we are now 53 days into the congressional session, and we have yet to take a single vote on a bill to lower costs for American families. Let me say one more thing, and Emil, I'll let you respond to that before we play this cut. From what I understand, and you're going to hear this in the cut as well, $5 billion got added to the military, if you will, and $13 billion has been cut out of the overall budget as well. But you hear, again, Congressman Johnny Oszewski, if I'm saying his name correctly, just highlight that nothing has been done for the American people. Is that what you're seeing? Because I'm pretty sure you've probably dug into this more than I have, or the average person, just because I know how you get down. Are you seeing some of what this guy is saying, or is there a lot of political swing in this?
So there's a bit of political swing in it, and this is the thing that I think, Shelley hit it right on the button. If you control the House, the Senate, and the White House, you should be able to pass a budget, especially with the conditions that are set right for this opportunity. So what I would have seen was they talked about how the Pentagon can't pass an audit, yet they increased the Pentagon's budget. They passed a bill. They say, here's DOGE. We're so happy they're cutting things. And then they add money to several areas that should have been cut along the same lines DOGE is cutting, right? So you have an opportunity to reinforce what DOGE is doing. So now you have this problem. The problem is that the CR maintains the spending level from fiscal 2024, which ended on September 30th. But conditions have changed since September 30th of 2024. So now you have to wonder, is this the appropriate budget solution for the current time? Well, this is where we get to what the congressman is talking about. They're cutting things that weren't cut in 2024, but they're adding money in places where they don't necessarily need to add. So his constituents are going to feel some of the pain from those cuts, because those cuts are relevant to the daily life of many Americans. So yeah, he wasn't spinning it so badly that it was pure partisanship, but he's emphasizing the problem, which Shelley pointed out. You got the House, you got the Senate, you should be able to pass a budget. And what the Democrats should do on their side is they should be able to amend that budget by offering amendments that either slow down the train toward passing the bill, or they should be able to compromise, what adults do in situations where they disagree, compromise with the Republicans and find ways to amend that budget to make sure their constituents' concerns are addressed. What you see is neither of those things happening, and now you have a continuing resolution that ends up adding pain to people who don't need it and not cutting the budget along the lines that they promised they would. So you end up with what people call a nothing burger, because there's just nothing there other than the same old same.
All right, let me play this next cut, and hopefully we can get Shelley back on, like he might have got knocked off.
Welcome back, America. We're here with Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House of Representatives. Mr. Speaker, you've had quite a victory here, and it's an amazing thing. You have a de minimis majority in the House of Representatives. In the Senate, the Democrats could have used the filibuster to block the bill. They failed. Number one, you've been highly underestimated, haven't you? In other words, people have said you got one or two votes, he can't pull this off, and yet you've pulled it off. How? Let's start this way. How have you done this? How have you been able to pull together the Republicans in the House of Representatives?
Well, thanks, Mark. Great to be with you. We did have a big week. It's the result of a lot of patience and a lot of prayer, frankly. We had a united front. I'm so grateful for this team that stuck together. I'm grateful for a president who is deeply engaged in the process. President Trump is a huge part of this, as you know. We all dug in and got the job done. For the second, third time in a row, they keep underestimating us on these big votes. But the Republicans are sticking together and getting it done. And this time, we passed a resolution to fund the government, to do the responsible thing, to do it in a way that actually reduces spending year over year, which we think is the first time that might have happened in the modern era, if ever. And we put the Democrats on record for just raw partisan politics. Mark, think of it. 99% of the Democrats in Congress, both the House and the Senate, voted to shut the government down to try to make some sort of aimless political point. It's shameless. They're using the American people as pawns, but Republicans are getting the job done, and we're sticking up for the country.
And this bill, what's in this bill generally? I mean, there's an increase for defense. There's a reduction in domestic spending, I understand. What pretty much is in this bill generally?
Well, here's what we try to do. We wanted to pass a resolution that would effectively freeze spending so that the administration can continue its incredible work through DOGE and through the other efforts of the administration to go in and root out the fraud, waste, and abuse that we've been trying to target in Congress for decades. But we haven't been able to get to it because we didn't have the algorithms that Elon has. We didn't have the access to all the data and the funding. And so now the game has changed. So we needed to hold the line in what we're doing right now so that when we get to the next fiscal year, FY26, which we will begin work on immediately now that this is done, we'll be able to incorporate all those savings and all the new transformational kinds of policies the administration is working with us to bring about. So this bill effectively does freeze funding, except that what you said, it adds a little to defense. That's what Pete Hegseth said he needed, the Department of Defense, some flexibility and $6 billion additional dollars for the immediate needs. And it reduces non-defense discretionary spending by about $13 billion. So overall, a $7 billion savings to the American people. And Mark, we are just getting started. We are going to reduce the size and scope of the federal government to make it look more like the framers of the Constitution intended. They wanted a lean, mean federal government that had clear oversight from Congress. We're going to be able to do that again, and we're excited about it.
Let me get Shelley back on this thing. Clip from Fox News as we see. Shelley, I'm going to let you kind of jump in on that. The little context that I'll add, if I could real quickly, is just hearing the overall numbers. I already mentioned the $5 billion that's been added to defense. No surprise there, really, in the sense of Republicans are known for adding to the military, if you will. $13 billion from the overall. You and Emil both have expressed that this didn't do enough, and at the end of the day, it's not really cutting the spending, really. But the $13 billion, I just want to put it in the context of something we've said on this show, and I want to remain consistent that. To a degree, I guess is a step in the right direction. But if we put 13 billion in context, just like previous on the show, me and Emil were laughing at the, if you will, the 70 billion that was supposedly saved by U.S. aid. And we were saying, well, that's less than 1% of 1%. We were dogging that out. 13 billion is not really a major number either when you put it in context, but I guess it is a start. Your thoughts, Shelley?
Well, what they're doing is they're playing a game with words. He's saying 13 billion has been cut. He's right. But what he's not saying is what's been added. And so if you do what's been added and what's been cut, it comes to a $10 billion more. You know what I mean? So, So that's what I was talking about before. Mm-hmm. And when you do the percentages like you do, which you're right about, the fact of the matter is, if you take out spending that we have to do, Social Security, things like that. If you take out that spending, $13 billion is a lot of the discretionary spending. And so I remind people our budget is in the trillions of dollars, but a lot of that is spending we have to do. It's already baked into the pie. Right. So, that's all I would say to that. Like I said, my take on this is I'm mad at my side. Emil's mad at his side. And it's really, it really is. Chip Roy. And I'll add this. Let me tell you what happened. I'm actually down at the aquarium waiting for the little one. They had a school, school trip.
Yes,
trip. And so I'm waiting for them. And I had my phone in my dash, and the sun was shining right on it, so it overheated my phone, and it shut everything down. So I apologize for that. But I was gonna say, like, even when Trump, I disagreed with Trump when he talked about primarying Thomas Massie. Thomas Massie walks around with a debt clock on his wrist. So he's serious about cutting spending. Rand Paul in the Senate. These are guys that went to Congress to cut spending.
Right.
And so, I don't mind people like that. Chip Roy's another one. But most of the Freedom Caucus voted for the CR, which I don't understand, because you're supposed to be the guys that really want to cut spending. So I don't know. It's a silly game. And we, the voters, eventually, we have to be the ones to make them pay.
Yeah. Emil, your thoughts, and then we'll play another cut.
Yeah. Shelley said we're getting played, and this is 100% true. And this is why we should all be frustrated. Looking at this from a different perspective, my challenge to anyone who says the government is too big or too bloated is, what size should it be? The budget needs to reflect the priorities of the Congress, and the Congress should be reflecting the priorities of the people. So a budget should look like what the federal government should look like, right? So we want to be able to say, this is the money we're spending to do these things. When Shelley talks about mandatory spending, you should go to the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office's website, cbo.gov. They have an infographic there that explains exactly what all the mandatory spending is and how much it was. The latest one they have is from fiscal 2023. You can see all of the categories that are mandatory spending, things like Medicare, Medicaid, our agriculture is one of them, Social Security, servicing the federal debt is another one. We have to pay interest on that debt. Certain veterans programs, all of those are mandatory must pays. When you take all of those out, you spent in fiscal 2023, you spent $3.8 trillion on things the United States cannot avoid. They must pay for these things by law. So that means the other 2.2 trillion is where you get to play the numbers game. You get to figure out what you're going to do. And Congress should be, especially this Congress, should be able to make some very clear decisions with the majority that Mike Johnson was talking about in the House. You have the Senate, and you have the president. You don't need to wait till fiscal 26 to start making those cuts that DOJ recommends. If you believe in those numbers, you've got your mandatory spending set aside. You have your discretionary spending. That's the money left over after mandatory spending. That 2.2 trillion, that is your canvas to show the American people what's up. The Democrats want a government that works for the people, that might be bigger in number, but has many more functions. The Republicans want it smaller with fewer functions. Those two visions often clash, but at the end of the day, the Republicans have the stick, and they dropped it in this opportunity to run a budget in the right way from now to the end of the fiscal year.
Hey, tired of the propaganda, listens to us. If you haven't done your research like both these brothers, who obviously, again, that's why we have them on the show, because of their expertise when it comes to politics. But if I don't listen to both of y'all right now, I don't know that there's a 10 billion ad, because of the way the back and forth and the propaganda and it goes in the media. You know what I'm saying? You're out there trying to keep up, but if you're locked in partisan wise, you won't know the truth. Again, that's why we're here. For Shelley, like you said on the show earlier, brought the idea that DOJ is needed as an outside entity because the politicians will not do it. When he dropped it on the show, that was a thought that I actually agreed with him on, right? Like I said, okay, I never saw it that way, Shelley, because we were like, why are they bringing in these 18-year-old geniuses? And, you and I were talking about, these are not real auditors. And Shelley said, the auditors, even if they did it correctly, would take 15 years because the budget's so big. He's absolutely right about that. But DOJ is not above criticism as well. So I want to play this cut just to highlight what some of the issues still seem to be from a transparency standpoint. So let me play this cut, and I'll let y'all respond to this.
Over the last few weeks, we've been reporting on errors in the so-called wall of receipts. This is a website that Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency has set up in the name of transparency to show how it's saved American taxpayers money. How did Musk and his team respond after we found those errors? By making their work less transparent and making their errors harder to find. But we found them anyway. DOJ has added a new section to its website. This one deals with federal grants. They posted 3,500 new federal grants that they said they'd canceled and saved $10 billion in the process. But they only included minimal information about each one of these grants, like the agency that made the grant and the amount of money they claimed they had saved. They didn't include other details that would allow a reporter like me or anybody else to track down which grant they were talking about and to figure out if the claim Doge was making is actually true. But they left identifying information for each one of these grants embedded in the code of Doge's website. This long string of numbers is a unique award ID that identifies each grant within the federal government's bureaucracy. And what we discovered was basically the same kind of error they had been making before. There were 5 of those errors in just the top 20 largest savings they were claiming. Those errors started with the largest item on the list. Doge said it had saved $1.75 billion by cutting a contract to a public health nonprofit. We talked to that nonprofit. They said Doge's data was wrong twice over. First, they said the contract had not been canceled. Second, they said that even if it had been canceled, all the money that the government owed them had already been paid. So the savings achieved by terminating this contract would be 0. In other cases, Musk's group seemed to have misunderstood a fundamental part of government contracting. They said they'd saved $83 million by cutting a grant from USAID to a nonprofit called Engender Health. What that group told us was that Doge had been looking at something called a ceiling value, basically an upper limit on what the government could ever possibly spend. Instead, they'd been given a much smaller number, $1.2 million, of which they'd already received about $500,000. So the savings achieved by cutting that grant, they said, was not $83 million, but something much smaller, about $700,000. The next 3 errors all seem to involve a similar misunderstanding. A couple of days after Doge posted those hidden clues that helped us find the reality of these grants, they removed them. A White House official told us that the identifying information was removed for security purposes. This new secrecy from Doge appears to contradict what Elon Musk has said in interviews. He recently said that Doge was transparent
line by line.
It's transparent line by line.
Which is quite remarkable.
We're going to continue trying to fact check those claims, but Doge has just made our work much, much harder. Over the last few weeks, we've been reporting on errors in the so-called wall of receipts. This is a website that Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency has set up in the name of...
Oh, man. Let me get Shelly. I'm going to Shelly. All right.
Yeah, can I go first?
Go ahead, brother. Let me say this to you, though, before you go first, just to set it up. So again, I do agree. Brilliant to have outsiders to include these geniuses looking at it again, but just nobody's above approach, right? And so it seems like the transparency is going away. So it doesn't make me trust them, if you will, Shelly, if that makes sense. Again, I love your idea, but go ahead, brother.
Of course it does. I'll give you the example of the 83 million, I think he said, for the nonprofit, right?
Mm-hmm. That
nonprofit staffed up with the full intention of spending $83 million over a number of years. That's how this works. If I go, like right now, I can go on the state of Georgia website and put in for a contract for $25,000, right? If someone came along in the state of Georgia and said, we're cutting that contract of $25,000, right? The bid, everything, they're just cutting out that contract. The state saved $25,000 that it was going to spend. It had put the money out there to spend, and they cut the contract. Now, if I won the contract last year and I got $12,500 of the contract, they still cut $25,000, right? $12,500 they've already paid out, but the contract will be renewed or picked back up or rebid on at the end of the contract. So, what they're doing, and it goes to, this guy is not looking for Doge's truth or lies. What he's looking for is to say it's not as big cuts. Because the same reporter has been reporting on why Doge cuts are bad. So either they're not happening or they're bad, right? And so my point is that for me as a voter who voted for this, I want the contracts cut things that are frivolous. Now, if you got a contract to pay kids in poor zip codes, school zip codes, and you're buying dinner and breakfast for them in addition to free school lunch, don't cut it. I get it. Don't cut that. You know what I mean? But if you're paying millions of dollars for someone to start a company to do, hello? Yo, what you doing, man? Why you looking at my car, brother?
What I did, I came over here just to see who you was.
Yeah. I'm good. I'm good. Hold on. Yeah. I know. I'm good. I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. I'm on the phone. I'm good.
I came here to see who you was.
Oh, I got you. I got you. I got you.
Nah, stay safe, brother. We good with that. Nah, stay safe, brother. We understand. Gotta be on your alert. We ain't mad about that. You were saying, yeah, there are certain ones that you do support, trying to get you back on your spot.
Yeah. Sorry. You know, it's funny.
I get it. No, we good on that.
I'm sitting at a spot, and I thought he was actually a cop looking in to see if somebody was here, but he thought it was an open window. He's about to reach in here and take something until he saw my face. But anyway, man, Atlanta's getting ghetto, man. Atlanta's real ghetto.
You just trying to keep people from moving here. That's all.
Anyway, yeah, but the point is, Doge making it sound like they're cutting millions and trillions of dollars? Absolutely. Is Doge cutting monies and contracts and grants that may or may not have gone to fruition and completed the total amount? Absolutely. Are they counting that money that still hasn't gone out? Absolutely. I think both sides are playing a numbers game in many ways, and they're playing it to fit their narrative. Right. And I think that we have to be smart enough to understand, where it's coming from.
And that's what we're here for. Emil, your thoughts on that as well.
Right. So Doge is the Department of Government Efficiency. You can go to doge.gov, and they'll list that, look at the wall of receipts yourself, and you can see what that reporter was talking about. So as we cut through the propaganda, one of the things is Doge is very much a marketing campaign as much as it is a cutting campaign. Let's be very clear. Their job is to tell a story about the good work they're doing, regardless of if it's actually good or not. Remember, Congress controls the budget. They put in law what must be spent. Doge does not get to cut anything. They get to recommend to the president, and the president in his budget request to Congress gets to recommend that Congress cut the things that Doge recommends. That's the sequence of events. What you see Doge doing is making recommendations to the president to stop funding certain grants, stop funding certain activities, which may or may not be true. One of the things that you're seeing a lot is that the government will authorize let's say the Department of Interior will authorize a contractor or a series of contractors to do some work under what's called an IDIQ, or indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity contract. That doesn't mean that the contract, which may be worth $10 million, they're going to spend $10 million. That is the absolute ceiling that they're authorized to spend. Then Congress may say, I'm going to appropriate or give you $1 million, and now you can go do the work you need to do and go hire the contractors you need to hire. So you have an authorization, which is the highest possible amount of money that can be spent, and then an appropriation, which is the rest of the money, is the actual money that Congress allocates or gives to an organization. Doge is cutting the authorizations as well as the appropriations, or recommending for cut. And they're counting the authorization as the highest number. That's propaganda, okay? The actual money that goes out gets counted, and then next year, when you look back in the Congressional Budget Office and the Office of Management and Budget at the president, on the president's side, they will look back and see the actual spending, the receipts, and then they'll be able to make some determinations as to how to go forward. Without all that, Doge is just really talking a lot of noise and saying very little.
Hey, fair enough.
I'm stealing that from you, Emil. No. That the line that it's as much a political as a marketing thing. That's good stuff.
Yeah, good stuff. All right. Well, we almost went viral because Shelly almost got assaulted on live TV with us.
Yeah, I almost assaulted somebody.
So let me go to a quick aside. I didn't mention this in the promotions, but I thought it was something worthy of us talking about.
I have to say, Charles, I was watching some of the other networks' coverage, because I do that. I flip around. And at one point, right in the middle of the action, when we were waiting for the astronauts to be pulled out of there. I mean, MSNBC wasn't even on it. They weren't even covering it. I actually tweeted it out or posted on X because I couldn't believe it. But this is a moment for America to celebrate. And also a big thanks to President Trump and Elon Musk for just saying, you bet, let's get him home.
Absolutely. Elon Musk saved the U.S. space program. If it wasn't for Elon Musk, we would not be able to fly U.S. astronauts from U.S. soil to the International Space Station. There's no doubt about it. We stopped flying astronauts on Space Shuttle in 2011.
And Scott, we're going to have a press conference. We're going to dip into it in a few moments. But what about that? This idea that space travel at some point seemed like it was going to be beyond our reach, our capability. And yet it took a private industry with the intuitive sense and perseverance and engineering knowledge of Musk and everyone he assembled to cut through that and say, no, we might need some government help as far as funding, but we can't abandon what we had been doing in space. We have to keep going.
Emil, I'll start with you on this one because Shelley took your turn, so it's back for you to be first.
So I'm a big space nerd. So let's talk about what happened. Right now, what they're talking about is the return of a crew from the International Space Station. That crew had been up in that space station for a lot longer than they had planned. They went up on the Boeing Starliner space capsule, and that space capsule had many, many faults. So Boeing company was one of two contractors, the other being SpaceX, that were supposed to be able to launch successfully astronauts to the space station and bring them back home safely. The Boeing launch last year was supposed to have kept them up for about 2 weeks. And the problem was they encountered so many difficulties with that Boeing capsule that they had to stay on the International Space Station for now it's been almost a year. And there was a problem that Boeing couldn't solve. So sometimes it's software, sometimes it's something that can be managed from the ground, but they couldn't manage it. It was just a faulty system. So they brought the capsule that brought those two, by the way, that's Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams. Those two are the astronauts that came back, brought the capsule home, and actually it worked pretty well coming home. So, had they wanted to take the risk, they would have been able to come home safely, relatively on time, maybe a week or so late. But NASA, being very, very, very careful, decided not to do that and to keep them on the space station and use a proven system, which is what SpaceX does with what's called the Crew Dragon, and bring them up a rescue vehicle that took several months for them to solve. I say all that because part of the propaganda, part of the spin you heard there is that Elon Musk saved the space program. NASA, after the retirement of the space shuttle in 2011, made it very clear they wanted to get out of the manned astronaut program in the way of lift to the ISS. So they hired the Soviet Union Russia to help do that. And then they had SpaceX and Boeing doing that as well. So we had, at one time, Russian rockets taking American astronauts to the space station and bringing them home safely. That changed to SpaceX and Boeing, but Boeing took forever with its part of the program, and that's why the astronauts ended up stuck. And SpaceX is really good. Remember, a huge portion of SpaceX is former NASA engineers, with a lot of people from Silicon Valley and some really smart people coming fresh out of college, among others. So they're incredibly innovative. People with pent-up opportunities that they didn't get to express from NASA, bringing great ideas, people fresh from different industries bringing great ideas, and they're all coming together at SpaceX, which is one of Elon Musk's most successful companies by far, and almost all of their money is being made from federal government contracts from DOD, Department of Defense, and NASA. So yes, they are very much responsible for NASA, but NASA had a plan 15 years ago to do this.
Yeah, let me let Shelley jump in here. Your thoughts, Shelley?
So everything Emil said is correct. I would just add here, this is kind of what Doge is doing. NASA was a bloated, very expensive endeavor. And they knew that they were a very bloated and expensive endeavor. And so, like Emil said, they cut back. Elon's genius is saying that private industry can do it for much less. And like Emil said, now SpaceX is a streamlined, very, dedicated group of people doing one thing and one thing very well. And so you don't have these competing, James Webb and all of these kinds of different things going on and under one roof. You just have one thing being done and being done very well. So, but the big part of that clip was what Laura, what's her name, said when she said that MSNBC wasn't even covering it.
That's the propaganda.
That's, hey guys, I gotta go. Let me take this call, okay?
No
this
problem.
The wife from the aquarium.
All right, no problem. I know you babysitting, so
yeah. Real quick, just to that's a tragedy that MSNBC didn't cover it because you want to be political and it's associated with Elon Musk. But the bottom line is those astronauts needed a celebration. They were not planning on being up there for that 9 or 10 months. So them coming home should be a celebration. We should all be very thankful. One, that we have a space station that's capable of supporting them for the time they were up there. And two, that we have a space program that, yes, SpaceX is the prime contractor for manned flight right now. But that space program is successful in bringing them home. And the bottom line is, SpaceX has its own problems. They're blowing up rockets trying to get to Mars with the Mars ship, so the Starship. So it's not like they're perfect, but what they are is really, really good at this one thing that Shelley was mentioning: manned space flight, getting people to and from the space station and putting things in low Earth orbit, which is technically very difficult, but they're getting it done and they're doing it very, very innovative. So it's amazing. It's really something special to watch.
Yeah. And it's amazing, like you said, not even covering it. And so what happens is, again, just pointing out the media propaganda. So even for, I think her name is that Ingram, Laura Ingram, is that her name? Do you know?
Yeah, that's it.
Yep. So Laura Ingram in that one, she was like, yeah, I go over to MSNBC and they're not even covering it. Unfortunately, that's been happening for almost a decade in our news, where both sides literally do not honor moments that should be American moments, because they've become so politicized in the media that she was like, I'm surprised they didn't even cover it. I don't know. I can't think of the latest one, but there's an event maybe just a year ago where it went the other way. Like both sides, we literally watched the media call each other out for doing the exact same thing, which is why I always press people that even if you're on a side, you have to watch the other news, because you won't know when your side is lying to you. That's crazy that it's not on every news coverage that these astronauts are being saved. That's crazy. But my point is, those moments get done both ways because things have become so politicized. We can't even cover American moments, and both sides do it. No, you may think the other side is worse than the other. It is absolutely not. We literally have news coverage that's so partisan that we won't cover. I'm trying to think of the last one, or somebody was getting nominated and put into a position, I think in a high position in the government. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting there, I'm just looking for it and realizing one side ain't even covering it. Like, this has become normalized in the media. So hence, this is why we exist.
It lends itself to a problem. And this is the thing that I hope our viewers are getting very savvy on. That if you watch this, specifically if we watch the news, right, you're getting led down a path that someone else wants you to take. And what you and I and Shelley are trying to do is give people information with which they can make good decisions. They don't want us making good decisions when you watch the news the way that they don't want you making good decisions. They don't want you thinking critically. When I do my news review, it's all online. I'm looking at multiple sources. I'm fact checking. I'm spending time. I do review fewer things every day than I used to because I'm taking more time to get behind the words and find out what's really going on. This is where we have a problem that hopefully this show helps solve. And that is slow down, take a look at the issues as they're happening, but really unpack them so that we can make good decisions together.
No, absolutely. We have to touch this issue that's brewing currently as we speak.
We have some breaking news now. The Supreme Court Chief Justice is speaking out after President Trump called for a judge to be impeached. That federal judge is demanding the government explain why it ignored his order blocking the deportations of more than 200 alleged gang members. President Trump posted on social media calling for the judge to be impeached, saying he's radical left lunatic, a troublemaker, and agitator. Now Chief Justice John Roberts is responding. Senior Washington correspondent Devin Dwyer joins me now. Devin, justices normally stay out of anything remotely political. So how significant is it to hear from the Chief Justice on this?
This is an extraordinary development, Diane, and a sign just how big this case has become. And let's not forget that until recent times, it was also highly unusual for presidents to attack sitting judges hearing cases involving them. But of course, Donald Trump has made that the norm. And now for the second time, Chief Justice John Roberts, first time back in 2018, responding directly to the President of the United States and that attack. In a statement a short time ago, he said for more than 2 centuries, it has been established that impeachment is not an appropriate response to disagreement concerning a judicial decision. The normal appellate review process exists for that purpose. So the the Chief Justice pushing back on calls that Chief Judge of the district here in Washington, Judge Boasberg, be impeached for this decision, temporarily ordering the administration to halt these deportation flights over the weekend involving alleged Venezuelan gang members. And several Republican members of Congress also joined the president's calls. But here John Roberts saying, calm down, let's draw a line in the sand. That's why we have a judicial system. If you don't agree with the decision of a judge, you can appeal it, Diane. And that fight is continuing today in that judge's courtroom.
And so what is the latest on that legal battle, Devin, over these deportation flights and whether they should have turned around and whether an order was ignored and whether the White House needs to obey that order and so on and so forth?
Yeah, it's a big mess if you're trying to keep up with what exactly is going on. But the bottom line is that the Trump administration is in a standoff with a federal judge who is simply trying to get more information about what has happened. Those flights, of course, already left. We've seen the pictures of those alleged gang members being delivered to El Salvador, to a notoriously harsh prison. But we don't know who those people are. The government says they're terrorists, but in an affidavit this afternoon, Diane, they said none of the men on that plane you see there had criminal records, and they did not provide any other details. They're citing national security concerns. But again, the purpose of the judiciary, the purpose of a judge is simply to conduct a fact-finding investigation. And the Trump administration just moments ago basically stonewalling that request. So this standoff in court continues, Diane.
All right, senior Washington reporter.
Lot to unpack. I wasn't originally going to play the whole cut, but it was so much in all of it, if you will, that I was like, I gotta play all of this so that we can weed through it. I really hate that we're missing Shelley in this moment just because we see Trump continuously, as he said on the show in the past, he said, hey, things are not going to be normal with this president. He's really, really pushing the envelope. I may be being a little hyperbole here, Emil, but I don't think the envelope typically gets pushed to this degree, except, at least in what I've read in American history, except during war, like very real wartime. That's where the president's going to push the envelope on everything because of what's, happening in the moment when it comes to a major war, if you will. But I almost feel like this is almost close to pushing the envelope in so many places. I'm not surprised that he's pushing the envelope, but that check and balance is definitely something that you're always concerned about, seemingly going to get pushed to the nth degree. Your thoughts on what you're hearing? Let me see, and I'll check some of these comments that's in the comments as well.
For sure. So you see that a dear friend of mine, shout out to Ed, he says that this president will find out just how strong and stiff the backbone is in Congress and the judiciary. And this is a test of that stiffness, that strength of spine. Because what you're seeing the president do is go around the rule of law. And this is something very fundamental to how America does its business. Every single person who is arrested needs to have their day in court, not because it's they're citizens or not, but because every single person under the Constitution, even non-citizens, have their day in court. That doesn't mean they get the full treatment, but it does mean they get to understand and pursue a proper accusation, defense, and then whatever results from that. Sometimes it's a judge only, sometimes it's a judge and jury, but sometimes it's just purely administrative. But to round up people, say they're gangsters, and then deport them before they've had any process is dangerous precedent. And the Judge Boasberg, is very clear. He's not saying they're guilty or innocent. He's saying, what process did you follow to do this deportation? And since there was no process that they could mention, he said, bring them back, put them through the process. And then after that, if they're determined to need to go away. The Alien Enemies Act of 1798 is what President Trump tried to invoke to make this happen. The Alien Enemies Act has to be used under a declaration of war. Only Congress declares a war, or in a situation where a foreign government has declared somehow that they're going to invade the United States. Venezuela has not declared it is invading the United States, not by action, not by word, and Congress has not declared a war against Venezuela or any other nation such that the Alien Enemies Act could be activated. So now he's outside the boundaries of what that law seems to say, plus he's not following any other process. So Judge Boasberg is asking very clearly, should we have sent these people to a foreign nation, to a third-party nation, because we don't like them? If you arrest them, put them through whatever process is the law requires, and then if the judge says or the jury says they need to go, put them on a plane and send them back to where they came from. Don't be hiring third parties to do that, because that's outside the boundaries of the law too. You send them back to where they came from, or you keep them here in prison. But what you don't do is hire a third party and say, hey, do you mind taking a few people off our hands? Now we don't know if these people are truly guilty or innocent. We don't know who they are necessarily. We don't even know. One of them doesn't even have, from what I've read, one of them doesn't even have a gang affiliation. So we're not sure. And what that means is, could you or I be swept up in this and be called someone that we are not, and without any due process be sent to shores that are not America, into prisons that are not America, to a place where I cannot be found or heard from again? And that is my concern by not following the rule of law.
And so I'm just going to weed through the propaganda of how this gets put in context. And regardless of whether you're on the left or right, at the end of the day, do we want people that are dangerous, that are breaking the laws out of this country? Nobody would argue against that common sense thought, right? The reality for us as the African-American community, what we're seeing and witnessing, how it's being done, is all too familiar for our history and culture in this country, and hence why our ancestors fought to shore up the already laws on books with civil rights to ensure these type of things were not continuing to happen without due process. All you had to say was, oh, he raped somebody, and you get lynched and found in a ditch somewhere. Just 67, well, maybe 80 years ago in this country, was a real life fear. And Emil, you've talked about that when we sometimes we actually dismiss what our ancestors actually did, and we're very unaware of how much fear or that they lived in based on how these very laws played out, just like we're seeing in this moment. I'm not exaggerating I'm not exaggerating when I say what I say, because when you listen to what Emil just broke down by the letter of the law, all the judge said is, let's halt this to make sure we're following due process.
We want bad people out just as much as anybody, but we have history that's not that far back that had many people that the government disagreed with held in prison, either on trumped up or no charges, for decades. People call them political prisoners in other countries. That's what's happened here in America. So we don't want to see a repeat of that activity under this or any president. So I am all for the rule of law. You've heard me say it all the time. I believe in it because it's the only thing keeping us from a decree from the king. The writ of habeas corpus is what I'm concerned about. That is the ability for the government to detain a person, and that person cannot challenge why they're being detained. They need to be able to say to the government, hey, you're detaining me unjustly, unlawfully, illegally, and you have to prove why you are detaining me in order for you to continue to do so. That allows all the evidence that the government puts together to be seen. There are special courts available if there are national security concerns, so that you can keep that information that might be used as evidence against a person. You can find a venue that keeps that evidence secret and secure so that they still have their day in court, but you don't have to blast national security secrets out to the world. There are ways that we have developed in this nation to ensure that every individual who is detained by the government is properly represented, or at least has their day in court through due process. Anything less than that allows the government to do whatever it wants to unchecked.
And as an African American, as a Black man in this country, abuse of the law to whomever has never worked out well for our community, typically in the legal justice system. Wanted to shout out Mickey, the life manager. She says, hey, here to listen, support, and learn. So just shout her out real
Thanks,
quick.
Mickey.
We are going into extra innings. We try to keep this at about an hour. We go over every now and then, so we're going to go over today. Again, we're missing our brother Shelly Winters, but I definitely feel like with all the DEI conversations we've been having up until this point, I wanted to lean into that. And you can even highlight the sister you have behind your head and why you even posted that, I think, after we play this cut. Because again, politically conscious, bringing the culture into this conversation. We've tried to give you the straight, no chaser, no propaganda on the actual politics. But again, this is hot and heavy, and I would like to touch this for our extra innings, as I'm now going to start calling this period. Let me jump to this cut real quick, and we'll go into extra innings here for just a few more minutes.
You know, a few of my colleagues today have said, Jermaine, you've been kind of quiet. We haven't heard from you today. You've been real relaxed. You haven't really said too much. And for the most part, this budget's been going, with these amendments, just kind of typical. And then we get an amendment up there that says none of our state dollars will go to white supremacy programs. And then unfortunately, kind of like the last time we had to do Convention of States, where we talked about protecting the 13th Amendment, it gets killed. But then on the back end, you all were smart enough to say, you know what, maybe we didn't realize what we did, and you decided to bring it back up. Because maybe you don't understand what you just voted on right there. Maybe you don't understand what this amendment does, merit-based and non-merit-based. You don't like being called racist in here. You hate when we use the word racist. You hate being attacked. You hate when we bring up race in everything. But then when we have an opportunity to show that we're not racist, you let me down every time. You want to talk about some stuff? Let's talk about how they just took almost $7 million from the College of Charleston because they want to help black kids. Let's talk about all the amendments that are in the state budget right now to defund all the black programs that are going across the state. Let's talk about AP African American Studies that was banned from this state. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about the attacks that you got going on people who don't look like you. Let's talk about it. Why do we continuously do this to our kids? Why? What is it that you're doing? What are you showing your kids? That public funds can go to white supremacy programs? We just had an issue at USC where all those kids felt scared. Every single time you get an opportunity to show us something different, you show us who you are. They are defunding our institutions. They are defunding our public education system. They're defunding African American studies. What is the issue here? What are you afraid of? Which definition don't you like? The definition of diversity? You don't like equity? You don't like inclusion? Which one do you like? Which one is the problem? Which one is attacking you? Which one says you can't be proud of being white or European? Which one is it? Where you have an opportunity to stand up for what's right. You're so afraid of your constituents. You're so afraid of getting primary. You're so afraid of doing the right thing. You're going to vote one way and then come in the back and apologize to me later. I should have did this, Jim. I'm sorry. I'm with you. I believe this. I don't want to hear not a single apology. You showed me who you are.
That's out of my home state. Proud of that brother standing up.
That was powerful, man. I really wish we would take time to understand American history. Black people in America have been foundational to our success as a nation. From Crispus Attucks and even before then, Jamestown 1619, all the way through right now, Black people in America have been foundational to its success. Whether we came from the Caribbean, whether our ancestors were born here throughout several generations, or if they're brand new coming from Nigeria or Ghana or wherever, they're here building this nation. And to erase us from history or even attempt to or minimize our presence, our contribution is a crime to me. It's a cultural crime. Brother Martin Luther King Jr. said, the peace is not the absence of tension, it's the presence of justice and love. Justice in this case is understanding how to frame all of this beautiful history that Black people have brought to America. It is not Black history, it is Black people in history. It is American history. And General Marcellus J. Harris, who was on active duty when I was a cadet at the Air Force Academy, is one of my inspirations. This woman endured all kind of stuff, and rest in peace to her. She died in 2019. But she endured so much hell to become the first Black female general in the Air Force. Why wouldn't you want your people to know, whoever they are, that this hero that's behind me was able to endure all of the hardship, much of it only because she was a woman, only because she was Black, and yet she said, I believe in serving my nation greater than the hell you're trying to put me through. And she rose to 2-star general in the United States Air Force. That story is definitely American history. And we're sitting up here erasing from the DoD archives all of people like her and people like the Tuskegee Airmen and people like a Medal of Honor winner and all these other Black, Latinx women. One of my dear friends was one of the first female fighter pilots. Mm-hmm. And she is now erased from DoD archives because she was a female fighter pilot. And they said to other women who they were recruiting, here's a woman doing something that nobody had ever done before. That should be celebrated. You don't build a culture by erasing parts of it and hoping the rest of it fills the gap. You build a culture by celebrating all of it. And instead of saying this part is forbidden and this part is welcome, you simply put it all out there and say, this is who we are.
This is who we are. I always tell people, Carter G. Woodson, considered the father of Black history. He actually is credited with starting Negro History Week, right? At the time, just to give people some more history, at the time, he chose the second week of February because it was Abraham Lincoln's and Frederick Douglass's birthday. At the time, he said, hey, he felt like they were the most transformative formational figures in African American history at the time. So he chose Negro History Week. In 1973, I think, is when Negro History Week got expanded into Black History Month. I always tell people, when you actually go study Woodson, I said that expansion into Black History Month, he would have turned over in his grave, because his original premise for even going to find the African American artifacts and history that was not being obviously put out in public education, his only goal was, hey, there's this history that America is not recognizing, that we are, to your point, absolutely part of the fabric of the country. So he actually thought, by gathering the information, by gathering the artifacts, that it would eventually just be included into American history.
That's right.
So
that was the whole point.
It was the whole premise.
Build a body of knowledge that all Americans could be proud to share, not just Black people. Although his focus was us. Let's not equivocate. But his point was, we were here, we built this. There's no reason to segregate our history from that of the nation. And what we should do is embrace all of the hell that we put ourselves through as a nation to get here. So yes, we had to fight a civil war to get here. Yes, we had to go through Jim Crow to get here. Yes, we had to unpack all these civil rights laws, the first of which was done in 1866. If you want to go back and look at all the civil rights laws, the best ones were from right after the Civil War. You don't need no more. 1866, 1867, 1868, 1878, 1877. All of those all those civil rights laws were all we needed. We didn't need to run it back in the 50s, 60s, and early 70s.
Let me cut you off and say, this is the part that even as African Americans don't understand. The reason it had to be ran back is because when the North and the South make the compromise and the military pulls out of the South and goes back to the North and say, okay, South, we've spanked you. We're one nation. We kept it together. We're going to move out and let you do your thing. During that time, the Ku Klux Klan starts a reign of terror that reels back laws that are on the book. So I'm a legal studies major. And the first thing they teach us about law, a law is not a law if it's not practiced. And so those laws were practiced. We had great expansion during the 12 years of the, you always talk about this.
Reconstruction, man, my favorite period.
Yeah, your favorite period. So when those laws got put on books, there was this level of success that got pushed back. So we actually think that our ancestors were begging for something for the civil rights. No, it was literally equal protection of the law, so that when we build something, you can't burn it down. Right. That's what they were able to get away with when we now, just a decade, just 20 years ago, we didn't even know about the Tulsa, Oklahoma. It was big, it was hidden in history. Now we know about the Rosewoods and the Tulsa. That's what was happening without equal protection of the law. Our ancestors never wanted to be and live next to white people. That wasn't the purpose of integration. Integration was, we want the same justice in that courtroom that everyone else gets. Because without it, our neighbors over there in that neighborhood can come over here and destroy ours with no recompense. That's what the purpose of integration was. Just for equal protection, not to live next to them.
The best part of our history is us asking our nation to honor its own laws.
Exactly.
That is the best part of our history. We ain't asking you for no handout. We are not asking you for anything. What we're asking you for is, would you please respect the laws that are on the books and see that I, just like every other person here, belong and have contributed to this nation's success. Stop acting like I'm not supposed to be here. You brought me here. I'm here now. You're going to deal with me? Deal with me. And if you're not going to deal with me, give me my money and let me go.
Absolutely. And I'm going to close it out. We're not going to respond to this cut, but I just think it's an appropriate way to end this, as I've explained, merit-based. Go look at my YouTube page. You saw my video I did about explaining how merit-based is being politically miscommunicated in a way to create propaganda versus here's the reality. Don't ever fall for that DEI is not merit-based. And I think this cut properly closes it out.
Doesn't DEI kind of clash with the whole concept of hiring based on merit? Okay, let's talk about it. There are so many assumptions packed into this question, but I will assume that it was asked in good faith and answer it as such. No. Hiring a non-male, non-white candidate does not clash with the concept of merit because white men don't have a monopoly on being qualified. Take as much time as you need with that one. At the heart of your question is an assumption that black people, women, queer folks, all the groups considered diverse, that they are, for one reason or another, less worthy and therefore could only have gotten the job because of their identity and not because they earned it. But not only is that wrong, it's insane. And I have some potentially disturbing news for you. All throughout American history, the only group of people to consistently get jobs they didn't deserve because they were the right race or the right gender were white men. In fact, decades of research found that black women and black men have to be overqualified to even be considered for higher status jobs, while researchers found that white men consistently benefited the most from nepotism. What all of this means is that a diverse, equitable, and inclusive hiring process may in fact be the only way to hire based on merit.
We can see this playing out in real time. Pete Hegseth was Trump's nominee for Secretary of Defense, has absolutely no qualifications to be in the position that he's in, but he is a Trump loyalist. For Trump and his administration, it's not about merit or skill set or if you're qualified to do the job. It's about, are you a loyalist to Trump? One of the things you have to know about authoritarianism is that they always redefine words to mean not what you think it means. So meritocracy doesn't mean earning a job based on merit. It means you were a loyalist to the person in power. DEI initiatives does not mean that we want to have a diverse pool to pull from with the most qualified candidates. It means we want to stop other people who are not white from getting access to these jobs. The more you know.
Don't let them play.
I appreciate the show. Thank you for letting us do us. We are here to unpack the noise and no more propaganda. We want to do our best to inform our people. I appreciate that we have a chance to do that every week or so.
If you're tired of the propaganda, listen to us. Stay in the back, brother.